Today I'd like to talk to you about Party Positive, which is a campaign here at Virginia Tech that I'm a part of. We like to promote a more healthy and responsible way of having fun. We like to focus on maximizing the positive outcomes and minimizing or completely eliminating the negative outcomes when drinking alcohol. Students here at Virginia Tech have plenty to have fun with. We have a great time when we tailgate, and our parties you can attend regularly during the semester. One thing we don't talk about that is at every single one of these events is alcohol, and an excessive amount of alcohol. Here, in each picture, there's at least 3 cups in every single picture. This issue needs to be brought up and spoke about more. Back in 2009, the Collegiate Times did just that when they reported that the average Tech student drinks 13.2 drinks per week on average, which is an alarming number because it's more than double the Virginia State average, which is 6 drinks per week, and 25% more than the national average, which is 9 drinks per week. Now think about it, this does kind of make sense. In my 5 years of being here at Tech, I've seen an increase in the number of alcohol-related JRs, underage drinking, and alcohol-related arrests. I bet you could definitely tell me that you've seen somebody in the football stadium being taken out in handcuffs because they're drunk in public. This kind of thing happens here on campus all the time, and it's almost accepted as common, which is kind of scary because what's happening isn't healthy. It isn't good for classes, it isn't good for schoolwork, it isn't good for the body. Now, I'm all for having fun, and I definitely like going out with friends, but there have been too many nights that I've seen my friends go out for a night of fun and drink heavily and come back and not remember anything that they did the night before. I like to know what I've done, and I like to know that I had fun, so I like to party positive. So let's break it down. Let's look at what's going on here at Tech. The undergraduates, we're going to say at ages about 17 to 25, are composed of 58% male students and 42% female students. Now, one can say that this is a reason for our excess consumption of alcohol because we have more guys here at Tech, but that's just not the case. What is the case is that we did a study back in 2002, the Virginia Student Council, who focuses on alcohol abuse, grabbed 1,072 students and asked them how much alcohol they drank. Now, the results were surprising, actually. 18% of the students back in 2002 said they don't drink. And this means they haven't had a drink in at least a year. The other 82% is made up of a variety of drinkers, from a casual drinker who only has maybe a couple to someone who binge drinks. And as you can see in the chart here, that 10% of the student body is what makes up the heavy drinkers, which are responsible for drinking 46% of the alcohol. The majority of the students only drink about 7%. So it fluctuates from no drinking to heavily drinking. But that heavily drinking is definitely there, and actually has increased since 2002. So now we have a kind of a background history of what's going on here at Tech. Now, how can we be more responsible when we party, and how can we avoid not remembering what happened the night before or being arrested for being drunk? The key step in knowing and avoiding negative outcomes is being aware of how much alcohol you actually consume. The one thing that's going to help you with this is knowing what a standard drink is. The actual definition of a standard drink is 0.5 ounces of alcohol. Now, I know when you go tailgating or you go to parties or you go downtown, you have more than just alcohol, you have specific kinds. So how can we determine what our standard drink is for a beer or a wine or straight liquor? Well, there's a mathematical formula you can use. You take the serving size of your drink in ounces and multiply it by the percent of alcohol by volume the drink has. Now divide that by 0.5, which is your definition of a standard drink. This formula is going to give you how many drinks of that particular alcohol is going to count as a standard drink. 1.2 beers is going to be considered your standard drink. That is, a 12-ounce beer, which is 5% alcohol by volume, divided by your definition of standard drink equals 1.2. Now, if you go online and you go to the Party Positive website, we have this formula broken down for you there, as well as other tips as the darker the beer, the more alcohol content, or different things about different wines or specific alcohols, and how it relates to males versus females and body weight. So now we understand what a standard drink is. How can we apply that to help us remain responsible and keep us partying positive? We like to call the area that you want to stay in when you're drinking the pleasure zone. That is, when you drink and you feel that high, that sense of enjoyment, that feeling you get is found between 0.00 and 0.06 BAC, your blood alcohol concentration. This is the pleasure zone. This is where all the benefits of drinking that people enjoy, the social lubricant, the happy, joyous feeling, the sense of well-being and everything's great, and the relaxation that comes with it. All of these things that people want out of drinking are found when your alcohol concentration, blood alcohol concentration, is less than 0.06. Now, when you feel that high, when you get that high between those 2 points, that doesn't change. You're not going to keep that high by drinking more or by drinking faster. Actually, by drinking more and faster, you're going to go even further up the BAC and into what we call the zone of regret. This is where all the negative sides of alcohol come into play. It impairs your social skills. You become sleepy or tired. Your speech gets slurred. Your overexpression of emotions, loss of coordination, which leads to be embarrassing and inappropriate behavior, as well as impaired sexual pleasure. This is where all the negative outcomes that we try to avoid and try to prevent come into play. So try to remain in that pleasure zone. Try to keep your BAC below a 0.06. And how do we do that and still remain drinking with our friends all night and not stopping after a few of our standard drinks? Well, we like to use a certain thing called a low-risk guideline, and this includes different tips and techniques to use to remain in that pleasure zone for a longer period of time so you can fully enjoy the social atmosphere and the party you're at. One of these practicing guidelines is avoiding hangovers, and that involves eating before and during drinking. Another good tip to continue remaining in that pleasure zone and being able to drink all night is alternating your alcoholic drinks with non-alcoholic drinks. Water is the best thing. It's also going to prevent a hangover. But if you don't have water, or you prefer something else, as long as it's a non-alcoholic drink and you alternate between alcohol and non-alcoholic, you'll remain in that zone of pleasure longer, and you'll eliminate the risk of furthering into the zone of regret. So, now we have all these tips, and we have all these different ways of partying positive and being able to go out and still enjoy ourselves and not worry about doing anything that's going to land us being arrested, being in student conduct, in trouble with them, or not remembering what we're doing. So what's the next step? How do we put this plan into action? Well, one thing I'd like to say to you is that I know it's difficult to go against the grain, and all of your friends are going out and just drinking one after another. It's very difficult. But think of it as this way. I like to know at the end of the night, when I leave, I'm hugging my friends goodbye after having a good time and not hugging the toilet. So go out, party positive, have a great time, and remember, sober is sexy. Thank you.